Hello, everybody. Welcome to Burned Out to Fired Up with Heidi Mitro. My name is Tanya Misselt. I'm the library director here at the River Falls Public Library. We have a mixed forum tonight. We have people here and live in the audience. We have people watching virtually from home live. We also have this as a recording for people to view later. So there may be a little bit of some oddities while we're doing this, but we're living in an odd world, so I know we can all roll with that. Before we get going, I want to thank our River Falls Library Foundation for the donations that they collect to help us pay for all of our presenters. So all of our presenters and all of our prizes and much, much more is paid for by the Library Foundation, and the Library Foundation takes donations to make that possible. So thank you to the foundation. And then without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Heidi Mitro. Heidi Mitro is the visionary and CEO of When You Lead Coaching and Consulting, a dynamic community fired up to affect change on a global scale by attending to individual and team strengths. When You Lead is a foundational program that connects individuals with themselves first. Heidi believes that when high achievers and deep feelers connect, communicate, and collaborate from a place of inner leadership, they become the conscious leaders of their lives, careers, communities, and the world. Man, am I going to be that good? Okay. In a sleepy Midwest town, you'll find Heidi with her crew, partner Mike, and their beautiful 3 kiddos, along with their 2 pooches who are very cute and funny. She loves a lazy day of reading in a hammock, hiking the local trails, and planning her next trip to everywhere. Thank you, Heidi.
Hello, friends. Welcome. Okay, I've been boxed in. I know for those of you at home, you can't see this really big green box, so I'm going to try to stay within that. But welcome. I'm glad you guys are here. My name is Heidi Mitro. Tanya, thank you for having me. And a special thank you to Alice as well, who they were talking about occupational wellness. And for me, that's kind of a jargon term. Does that sound jargony to you too? Like, what is occupational wellness? But really the goal of occupational wellness is for those of you in your careers to be able to be healthy no matter where you are. That's really what we're after, is health on a comprehensive level, no matter where you are. So we're going to get started here. You are going to have some slides that you're going to see, and there's going to be some light bulbs. This is your time to talk, by the way. There's nothing worse, in my opinion, than having someone talk at you for an hour. So if you don't want to participate, I understand, but please, please, someone talk back to me when there's a light bulb. Deal? Okay, everybody nod your head and say, yes, Heidi, deal. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Again, thank you to Tanya and Alice for this invitation and for being willing to risk it on something that they weren't quite sure what I was going to talk about. So our agenda for tonight, we are going to arrive. That might sound kind of interesting, but we are going to walk through an exercise that's going to get you a little more present. I know you're all coming from places, and those of you at home, you are probably doing 800 other things. Give yourself a minute to get here. We're going to arrive. Then we're going to actually talk about what burnout is. It sounds kind of obvious, but we're going to talk about what that actually is. And then I'm going to teach you a tool. And I don't want to spoil the ending, but there is a little bit of a twist at the end. And the goal is for you to leave feeling really, really good about yourselves as individuals, and to be curious and to have way more questions than answers after the session. Okay? Are you willing to be curious? Oh, yes, even a yes. I appreciate that. Say again. Oh, I missed it. We got a peanut gallery already. I love it. So I'm going to teach you this. So we're going to do an arrival. How many of you have come from 500 other places and you're like, there's one more thing at the library I need to do? Or you might be going home and you're going to be tending to, for me, it's going to be tending to my people, my animals. But there's so much that's disjointed about our world right now. And arriving sounds very simple, but it actually gives me an opportunity to calm down because I get excited when I teach. But it also gives you an opportunity to get ready to learn. Okay, so I'm going to have you close your eyes if you're willing. And for those of you at home, just stop cooking dinner for a moment. I need about 3 minutes. We're going to take 3 intentional breaths together. And if that's annoying to you, we're going to take 5. Okay. So we're going to inhale in through our nose and exhale out through our mouth. It's very simple. We're going to do that together. Inhale in and exhale out. Good. And we're going to do that one more time. Inhale in and exhale that out. And one more time. Inhale in and exhale out. Good. You feel how calm that is, where sometimes we get a little sleepy when we start to breathe intentionally, but it's a helpful tool if you're on teams within your job, if you're at home, if you have dinner with your family. Sometimes just taking 3 intentional deep breaths can shift your focus. It can shift you into a different mindset. And it's important when we're talking about overall wellness that you remember to slow down. Slowing down is a really important skill. So thanks for being willing. Not everybody's willing, or they're like, oh, shoot, she's going to make me breathe. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So here are some ground rules. I think it's really important that we're all on the same page. If you have a question, ask it. I would like this to be a ground rule for the rest of your life. Whether you are here at a presentation, whether you're at the grocery store, whether you're at your place of worship, if you have a question, ask it. I promise I will answer it to the best of my ability. And if I can't, I'll make a joke just because it'll make me uncomfortable if I don't know the answer. Okay. Second ground rule, hand gestures. It's not what you think. But if you hear something that someone else says, I'm going to demonstrate this for you. And I want to thank the River Falls Public Montessori because this is where I learned this. When we were during COVID, my youngest was a first grader. And if you have first graders on Zoom, you realize just how squirrely they can get and everybody wants to talk at the same time. So they taught this hand gesture of connection, right? The sign language for connection. If someone says something that you relate to, or if I say something and you want to communicate to me that you get it, give me a connection, okay? Or a thumbs up. Those are your options. Let's practice. For those of you at home, please practice with us, okay? So I say something really hilarious and you think it's funny, you're like, oh, it's so great. Or if you understand something, if we do a check for understanding, wow, you guys got it. I appreciate that. Thank you. There are no other hand gestures that I'll be teaching. Those you have to do on your own. And if you get activated, as you get activated, if you're learning something, especially because we're going to be talking about stress, you might hold your breath, especially when we're going to talk about burnout. I want to invite you back to your breath. 3 deep breaths. Inhale in through your nose, exhale out through your mouth. Deal? This is when you give me a thumbs up. Oh, you did it. Good job. Thank you. Appreciate that. So who am I? I'm just going to run through this briefly, but I'm Heidi Mitra. I live right here in River Falls. We've lived here for 10 years, and the library was actually one of the first places that we came. And it became a hub for us. And so with my husband, Mike, and our 3 kiddos and our 2 dogs, we've really made River Falls our home. And I have a business where we do coaching and consulting, leadership coaching and consulting, which is so fun. And I am a community member and ally. I am actively working to make our community inclusive and to feel safe here. I think that's really important. And I'm also acronym obsessed. I think it's important that you know that. And loose leaf paper, if you needed another random fact about me. So we'll move on. Updated leadership. This is what I teach. I really genuinely believe that we get to update leadership. I think a power over leadership dynamic is outdated. Anybody agree with that? Please agree with that. It might be a little bit difficult conversation. Yeah, thank you. But yes, I see you in the back. Yeah, I understand. But it's important that we are activating people's inner leadership. And inner leadership really is where you are living from a place of strength. You are accessing your gifts and talents and sharing that with your community. And so updated leadership, first and foremost, starts with connection. It feels good when you like people, doesn't it? It feels good when you feel connected. But the first person I want you to connect with is yourself. And that's the game we're going to play tonight, is I'm going to run you through an exercise that will help you connect to yourself more intentionally. And then once you know who you are, you know your inner leadership style, you have to talk to people. There's this crazy thing where we need to communicate. And we think of communicating as often speaking, but it's also listening. How many of you agree we might need to have a little bit of a listening session with what's going on in this world? I see a lot of thumbs up. Thank you for that confirmation. But after we communicate, after we listen, after we speak, that's our opportunity to collaborate. And we have some really complex problems that we need to solve. And I believe that we in this room can help to solve them. If you know what your gifts and talents are, and you are healthy and you're in community and you're willing to collaborate, I think we can solve some really complex problems together. And so my company is my love letter to the world, essentially. I get to play with the coolest teams and the coolest individuals and do events like this to help connect, communicate, and collaborate with River Falls. Isn't that great? I love that. Thanks for the heads up. So let's talk about why we're here. We're talking about burnout. How many of you actually know what burnout is? It's kind of a buzzword though, right? Like everybody's like, oh my gosh, I'm so burned out. Give me a couple words that you think of when it comes to burnout. Don't leave me exhausted, depleted. Yep. Other words that come to mind for burnout? You're doing so good. I know you don't want to participate, but you're doing so well. I got to stay in my box here. Any other words when you think of burnout? Overextended. Very good. Yes. That makes total sense. And there's actually a difference between stress and burnout. Stress is actually you have too much going on. I want you to hear this. And it's also temporary. Do you hear that? So stress is like you have so much going on. You have a lot of commitments. You have things that are going on. But once those are completed, your stress level drops. It's usually temporary. Burnout is when you don't have enough. This is the simplest I could make it. It took me 3 weeks to make this as simple as I could. Burnout is when you don't have enough. Anybody relate to that? You're like, I just don't have the vitality to do what I need to do. And this is more chronic. So this is the difference. And the reason I want you to know the difference is because when you name it, you can actually come up with solutions for it. If we can't accurately name what's going on, we can't have solutions. And yes, I'm talking about burnout, but I'm talking about a whole bunch of other things too. If we can't name it, we can't find solutions. Does that make sense? Makes sense to me. So I just want to make sure that it makes sense to you as well. So this is what I think of as too much. When I'm stressed out, I imagine that each of these bonfires, it's not out of control, but they all require my attention. My business, my family, my friends, my community, they all require my attention. And sometimes it's too much. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed. This is my definition of stress. Because I like all of these things. How many of you have so many wonderful things going on that are stressing you out? You're like, yes, it's interesting to think about it that way because sometimes we think of stress as bad. And so we forget that we need to have limits on some of the good stuff too. I just say no to a lot of things in order to be able to do tonight, right? Sometimes you have to pick between wonderful things. Sometimes you have to choose which bonfires you're going to tend to. But this is stress. Burnout, on the other hand, there's some different symptoms to burnout. They're usually physical. Anybody relate to that when you're just like, I don't have it. I am going to stay in my bed and watch all of the shows and do nothing. Anybody, I hear you laughing and I see hands raising. There's a lot of head nodding for those of you who are not here. It's chronic, however. That's the difference. When you have chronic back pain, I have a background in body work and I worked with a lot of people who were burned out. And they had chronic pain. Chronic pain is a sign of burnout, my friends. It is. Chronic shoulder pain, low back pain, that feeling of not having enough, that's burnout. And there's also a sense of detachment. You ever have it where you wake up and you're like, I'm not capable of any of what is required of me today? There's this real detachment and kind of like, I don't care. I don't have it and I'm not going to get it. The detachment is different. Stress is you are scurrying. Burnout is there's detachment. So I want you to know the difference. And oftentimes with burnout, there's the neglect of personal needs. And this got really blurry during COVID because we call it the work mullet, where it's like business on the top, jammies on the bottom, right? And you could go for days and no one would know if you showered, right? You use your shower in a bottle. And it matters. As we're rejoining the world, Kim and I were just talking about this beforehand, our people skills have somewhat atrophied. We have to remember how to interact with each other. But if you're neglecting those personal needs, that is more of a sign of burnout. If you're not eating, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're feeling so depleted and you're also wanting to detach. So that's the difference. Those are it's as simple as I could make it, but the difference between stress and burnout. Does that make sense? I'm seeing some head nods. For those of you at home, give me a thumbs up. Okay, thanks. So we're going to open it up. I'm curious what you heard, or maybe if you've learned something new. What landed for you in the difference between stress and burnout? And again, don't make me just talk. What did you learn there, the difference between stress and burnout? I'm looking at you, middle row. Anybody? Stress isn't all bad. That's right. How many of you believe that? I know sometimes I do believe that too. But how often do we say, oh, I'm so stressed out? What we actually could say, I have a girlfriend who we say, my life is so rich and full. So instead of saying, you know how everybody says, hey, how you doing? And you're like, oh my God, I'm so busy. She and I say, oh, our lives are so rich and full. And it has helped. You can use that if you want, because it's helpful, because sometimes we're stressing ourselves out. I find myself doing this where you're like, I'm telling everybody all of the things that I have to do, and I want to do all of them, but it's not all bad. So try that the next time someone says, hey, how you doing? My life is so rich and full. And then just clock it. Just look at their face. It will be wildly entertaining for you. Okay. Other revelations about stress and burnout that you maybe hadn't considered. Yes. Burnout is more chronic and longer lasting. That's exactly right. And they require different things, right? They also have a lot in common. And the tool that I'm going to teach you is actually, it applies to both. And that's important for you to know. But I want you to know that when it comes to stress, you have more control because you still have some vitality. If you've hit burnout, sometimes that's not sometimes, all the time, that's your cue to rest. That is your cue to retreat. It is your cue to lean on your community. And how many of you are like experts at asking for help and delegating? That's what I thought. For those of you at home, there was no connection and no thumbs up. But it's difficult, right? We're not taught how to do that. We're taught to take care of it ourselves. We don't want to be a burden. We don't want to bother anybody. Do you relate to that? Like, I'll just handle it. And if you're anything like me, even if you ask for help, they're going to do it wrong, right? That's just, not you, Mike, but it matters for you to know that it's okay to ask for help. It really is okay to admit that we're not meant to do it by ourselves. It's one of the reasons I want you to connect to yourself, to be able to communicate and to be able to collaborate. We don't all have to do it on our own. It's not possible anyway. Okay. All right. So are you ready to play a game? I know you are. And you're just going to love it. It's just going to be great. So this is where we need these clipboards. Can you help me with that? So the tool that I'm going to teach you, you didn't know you were going to have to participate. You maybe wouldn't have come, but I'm really glad you did. The tool that I'm going to teach you is actually from this book. It's called The Energy of Money. Has anybody read this book? This should be required reading. Has everything to do with money and nothing to do with money. But The Energy of Money, Maria Nemeth is her name, a spiritual guide to financial and personal fulfillment. If that isn't a promise, right? But this book I've had for 15 years. And when I first went through it, I just wanted to know how to make more money because I thought, well, I'm stressed out and I don't want to burn out, so I need to make more money, right? We get that. But this tool is from this book, and I would encourage you to get it right here at River Falls Public Library. And the game we're going to play is the Standards of Integrity. Now, when I first heard the Standards of Integrity, I was thinking it was like, at a bank when they have like a picture of a whale and then it's like integrity underneath it. It just sounds like jargon still to me. And so I do love words. And a standard is actually a military term. Did anybody know that? Standard is a banner. Of course you did, middle row. I knew that. I knew you would know. But a standard is a banner. So if you think in battle, when you are in the military, you are staking your claim. This is your banner. That's your standard. In integrity, the root word of integrity is actually wholeness. And so I love this idea of having a banner of wholeness. Isn't that cute? Just say yes. That's adorable. Right? Banner of wholeness. And this is what we're going to do is we're going to help you identify your banner of wholeness. And the reason that I want you to have this tool is you can use it when you're stressed out, but you can also use it when you're burned out. What we're going to do is return you home to yourself and give you some language about who you actually are. Are you so curious about who you actually are? Because you're going to find out at the library tonight. So you see this in front of you, yes? For those of you at home, you don't have this paper, but you can get a piece of paper and just line down the middle. Oh, second page. Does everybody have, oh, did I cross the line, Kim? I crossed over the green line. This is the one? Yep. Do you have that one? Okay, perfect. Yep, that's the one that you need. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. You may want to edit this later and cut out these minutes, but we're going to start with just the left side. I know there's some overachievers in this room. Don't go to the right side yet. We're not there. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on the left side, and you are going to make a list of people that you admire. Now, here's what happens. You're going to have a range of emotions. You're going to be like, who do I don't really admire anybody. Oh my gosh, I have 7,000 people that I admire. They can be people that you know. This could be people that you don't know. It could be famous people. It could be dead people. It could be family. It could be characters in a book. But I want you to start thinking, get the prime pumped of people that you admire. And I'm going to give you 4 minutes to do this, because the first minute you're going to sit there and go, oh my God, I can't believe I signed up for this and now I have to write a list. So start with maybe the person you came with. Maybe you do admire them. Ready? Okay, you've got about 4 minutes. Have fun. People you admire. Don't go to the right side of the column yet. We've got another minute. So if you're already done, you only have to suffer for 1 more minute. And for those of you that are writing novels, you're going to have to wrap it up. All right, my new friends. What was that like? What was it like to have to write down a list of people you admire? Weird. I get that a lot. That's usually the first word when I teach this. It was weird. Can you tell me why? Would you be willing to tell me why? Something you don't think about very often. Do other people relate to that? Yeah, there's a lot of head nods. What about you at home? Do you relate to that? Do you experience that you're not really thinking about who you admire? What's your definition of admire? Anybody? You look up to them. Do other people agree with that? Right. Other definitions of admire? They have qualities that you'd like to have. That makes total sense to me. Absolutely. Okay. Anybody have a laundry list of people they admire? Raise your, you'd like more than 5. How many of you are like, no, there's like a person on my list? Yes. Can you do a little self reflection on why that might have been a struggle? You got stuck in that category of people. Yes. So they're talking about the musicians and kind of getting stuck in that bias. Then it's like recency bias too, right? Like who did I just interact with at the co-op? Musician, yes. So I do want to give you full permission to revisit this, especially as we start to share maybe people that we do admire, right? You can come back to this. This is actually a tool I want you to be able to reuse. The first time I did this exercise was like 15 years ago, and I like to revisit it because the people that I haven't met everybody I'm going to love yet. Isn't that neat? I haven't met everybody that I'm going to admire yet. So this is one of those tools for development that you can revisit. I would encourage you to do it maybe once a quarter, right? See who you've collected. Anybody have authors or writers on their list? Anybody have any famous people on their list? Yep. Anybody have family? Okay, that's good. And the people at home can't see that, so you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to. Right. How many of you, it was just like, wow, I could think of so many people. Wonderful. Yep. Would you be willing to share what your experience was like in writing your list if you have a lot on there? Sure. Mm. Yes. So to look around in your experience, especially with people like your parents, and recognize their kindness. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And how many of you felt kind of good making your list? How many of you needed to feel a little good? Yeah, you all better put your hands up. It's nice to think about people that we admire. And I know that sounds so obvious. And I have had people in my life say, do you just get paid to state the obvious? It's like, yeah, it's not a bad gig. But it does feel good when you start thinking about who do I admire and why? And that's going to be the next part of what we're going to be doing together. This, I'm going to give you a little bit more time. And I know that can be kind of interesting with online, but those of you at home, play along. We have time together. You've already invested in being here. Give yourself the full experience. So, what we're going to do, we're going to go to the right side of your paper now. I know you've been waiting to see like what the heck we're going to do here. But this is where you're going to identify the qualities of these people that you admire. There's a little bit of a twist here, so stay with me. You're going to take the first person on your list, and then what you're going to do on the right side of the list is write down all of the qualities that that person has that you admire. Are we tracking so far? Okay. Then what you're going to do is the second person on your list, you're going to scan the qualities that you've already written and make a check mark and add any other qualities to your list. Does that make sense? So then what do you think is going to happen? You're going to go to the third person. And so you'll end up having a whole list of qualities and a bunch of check marks. That's what's going to happen. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to give you 8-ish minutes. I know that is going to maybe feel like it drones on a little bit, but for those of you at home, play along. And if you're bored, meditate with me. Okay. So I wish you peace. Go forth and make your qualities list. Got about 2 more minutes for those of you who need the guideline. All right, I'll have you write your final words if you don't mind. Make your final check marks. Again, you can revisit this. Okay. What was that like? What were some observations that you noticed about the qualities that you wrote down? Not all at once. It's very overwhelming when you all talk over each other. What did you notice? Yeah, Tanya, please. They spoke to your values. I love that. Anybody else have that same experience where you're like, oh, I recognize these? Mm-hmm. What else did you notice? Do you like these words? Did they make you feel good? Again, look at you guys feeling good again. What else did you notice though? For real. Yeah. A lot of commonalities, right? A lot of different categories of people have the same qualities. Molly, did you notice that as well? Yeah. There's some similarities and these people might not even know each other. Is that true? Like if you can look at the qualities list and you're like, wow, this person from this decade, that's how I did it initially, was I went through the decades of my life. Like, who did I love? The boxcar children, right? Like that was right. What else did you notice about your qualities list? Was it easy to identify what you admired about them? Sometimes it's hard to put it to language. Did anybody find that? Where once you had to cross a category, you're like, oh God, I don't even know what I actually like about them. Anybody else experience that? Yeah. Okay. So the next part of our game, since I know you guys are loving this game thing, is you should have a second page, yes, that says the qualities list. Got to stay in my bright green box here. I want to come to you here. So the way that Maria Nemeth teaches this is she calls it your heart lantern. Okay. Now, some people think that's a little woo. I'm going to teach you a couple of different versions. If you like the heart lantern, go with it. If you don't, I'm going to give you another alternative. But what she wants you to do is go through all of the qualities list that you just did, right? So in that right column, and imagine that you have a lantern at your heart. If you hate this stuff, bear with me just a second. But when you read the word, if that heart lantern gets bright, if it's like, oh, I really like that, you have that warm sensation, there's a good feeling, I want you to transfer that to this qualities list page. Does that make sense? You do not have to transfer all of the words. Another way to think about it is, do you lean towards the word? Do you lean back? Are you kind of neutral? We're looking for those words that make you lean forward, where you're like, oh yeah, that's the one I want. And then you're going to add it to this qualities list. Does that make sense? Ready, go. I feel like we should have music. I think there's probably a copyright. When you're finished with your list, if you'll give me a thumbs up, that'll be my cue. Thank you. Way to go, middle row. Okay, this is a beautiful example of if you have a question, ask it. I love that. So you're wondering what to put on the next page. Is that right? So of the list that you have that has all of the words and the check marks, you're going to go down that list and the words that really speak to you, the words that make you feel really good, you're going to take those words and put them on the next page. If you don't want to do that, you can just circle as well the words that you want. It's kind of like we're sorting the words now, which ones you want to keep. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, I can keep explaining. For real. This is such a great example of if you have a question, ask it. So thank you. Have I answered your question or do you need more? Yep. So I want you to look at the words on the right side. You have that list, right? Yep. I missed it. Did you say yes? Okay, perfect. All I would love for you to do now is those words that make you feel really good and you want to keep them, just circle them. And if you choose, you can transfer them to the next list. Is that okay? Thank you. Out of those initial words, that's right. Yep. So some of those words you're going to want to keep, and some of them you might not have like, man, they're good, but they're not making me real excited. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you for asking. For those that have a list, would you be willing to read them? I know, don't get all twisted about it. Middle row's like, Heidi, no, we've already participated way more than we thought we were going to have to. Shut it down. Yes, please, Katie. Of course. Yeah, and you can. You're at choice. Can you give me the first one? I'm going to repeat it back for the people watching at home. Successful, compassionate, strong, positive, driven, entrepreneur, bright. And those words make you feel what? They make you feel good. What you had said was I got like a boom. How many of you had that kind? It was like effervescent. That was a word that someone used in a training and I was like, that's really descriptive. I relate to that. Other lists. Anybody else be willing to share their list? I know it's vulnerable and I appreciate that and you don't have to. Back row's like, no. Are you willing to read your list? Yeah, you. You are at choice. Hardworking. What's the second one? Loving, resilient, assertive, sweetness, courage, humor. Wonderful. How do you feel about your list? Was it easy to pick the words? Yeah. It was like, yeah, I like them. Those are mine. I get to have them. One more. Anybody else willing to read your list? Yeah, Molly, please. Kindness, humor, caring, calm, conversationalist. Yes. And it's so interesting when we start to read these words. Do you identify with them on some level? You recognize them. Yes. Because these are actually you. These are actually who you are. These are your standards of integrity. So the twist, dun, 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 is I know these are mine because I see them in others. And this is usually the part where some people get a little misty. I don't see too many tears, but you can cry when you get home. It's fine. But there's a recognition of, wait a second, I see these in other people, but are these actually mine? And you know how when you look at a baby and you smile and you're making all those weird faces and they make them back? Those are mirror neurons, right? The only reason you can identify these qualities in other people is because you have them. Are you hearing that? The only reason you can identify these qualities in other people is because you have them. So what I'm going to have you do, I have note cards for you. I'm going out of the box, Chris. Or Kim, pardon me. Can you pass these? Just everybody take a note card. And this is where you get to write, I know these are mine because I see them in others. And then you're actually going to take these qualities with you. I want you to put them in your purse, put them on your mirror, hang them everywhere. This is my first standard of integrity card when I first did this a million years ago. But the reason that I want you to start identifying with your standards of integrity is this is how you're going to prevent burnout. It's also how you're going to manage your stress. So now that you know these words are yours, anybody feel a little weird that they shared them out loud? Some people are like, you tricked me. But Katie, as you think about your words, how does it feel to know that they're you? It's pretty cool. Do you feel a little bashful about it, or like, no, I'm going to stand 2 feet in these? Say more about that. She said that she's feeling humbled by that. What do you mean by that?
I think personally, I kind of had a hard time with like more self-worth stuff.
Sure.
And so seeing the strong quality that love so much others, realizing that, wow, yeah, he's called self.
And when we're on those self-worth journeys, and it's like, oh, sometimes I struggle with my own self-worth. And then you see all of these people that you admire and you realize you have a lot in common with them. That can be very humbling. That's true. Other thoughts on your words now that you know that they're yours? Anybody like stop looking at me now? Molly, what about you? Would you be willing to share how it feels to claim these? And you don't have to share. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah. Like what she said.
You can just say cosign. I like what she said. That was wonderful. Right. It is interesting when you might not think of yourself this way. How many of you are like, no, this is not me? Can you speak to that feeling of like, oh, I'm not sure if this is me or not? There was kind of a yes, sort of. Would you be willing to explain a little bit about what you mean?
Like we're confident and what else we're confident. I like that.
Yes. And so when you identify a word, something like confident, and you may not feel that all of the time, you can go, oh, maybe this actually isn't mine. I'm going to give you a little twist on confidence. Would you be willing for a little bonus lesson? Because confidence is something that I teach on. And we have, again, an outdated version in my mind of confidence. We think of confidence as like, I always know what I'm doing. I have a clue when I walk into a room. The root word, write this down. The root word of confidence is FID. FID. Did anybody know that? You all did. All of you etymology geniuses in the room, right? But the root word of confidence is FID, and FID actually means to trust. FID means to trust. Think of fiduciary, right? Like trusting yourself with money. Confidence isn't you always know what to do. Confidence is I trust myself in the moment to make the best choice that I have access to. And your standards of integrity can help you with that. To walk into a room and go, I actually do know who I am. I might not have all of the answers. Thank God we don't have to have all of them. We were talking before our session where it was like, I don't mind speaking. Please don't make me do any of the AV stuff, or none of this would have gotten anywhere other than in this room. Right? So confidence is really about you trusting yourself. And sometimes the best way to trust yourself is to say, I don't know. Does that make sense? To me, that's updated leadership, being willing to admit that you don't know and trusting that you can ask a question if you have it and someone will know the answer. That's true collaboration. Otherwise, you're just in a room of know-it-alls, and that's not fun. How many of you love being in a room of know-it-alls? I know, right? Like, of course not. Other thoughts as you're looking at your list? Tanya, would you be willing to share about how your list makes you feel? You don't have to share what's on there, but do you identify with your list? You talked about values originally, and so I'm curious if this is like, yes, this is totally me. Yes. So seeing these as your values and how you want to emulate, that's exactly the point. It was very beautifully said. And so what I want you to start thinking about, this is the next piece. We're going to take this a layer deeper. We've got some time. And here's a question that can kind of mess with you a little bit, and it's meant to. How are you already That's the key word. How are you already an expression of your standards of integrity? How are you already an expression of your standards of integrity? And so an example of that would be one of the words that really surprised me on my first one was joyful. I do not consider myself joyful. Sometimes people say that I am, but I consider myself kind of a skeptic, right? And so when I was admiring joy in other people, I was like, how am I already an expression of joy? And I really am. I really do look for fun. I look for the positive in people. I want to have a good time, especially at the library on a whatever night tonight. Is it Thursday? I don't know. That snow day goofed me up. But how am I already an expression? I was like, wow, I need to give myself more credit. How many of you feel that way? Like maybe I should give myself more credit. So I would like you to write down 3 ways that you are already an expression of 3 of your standards of integrity. Does that make sense? So pick 3 and write down an example of how you are already expressing that. Does that make sense? Thumbs up if it makes sense. Ask questions if you have them. If you want to give me a thumbs up when you have them, that would be helpful. Okay, so you know I'm going to ask you to share in case you haven't been following the way this goes. Anybody willing to share one word from their list in a way that they are already an expression of that? Not all at once, back row. Yeah, please. Thank you. Being tough. Give me an example of that. Doing what needs to be done. That just very simple, right? Do you identify with being tough? Yeah, I can see that about you. As soon as I walk by you in the hallway, I'm like, yep, got it. Nailed it. And when you know who you are, this is stating the obvious, but when you know who you are, it's actually easier to be more confident. When you just are simply the expression of who you already are, it changes the game. And the reason that we're identifying this is because when you're stressed out, if you have too much to do, or if you're burned out and you just don't have vitality, your standards of integrity can be an anchor for you to go back to. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Other expressions. Anybody else have tough on their list? That's a new one for me. Way to go. Cycle breaker in the back. Who else had one? You can do it. Will you give me one? Yeah. I'll edit that out for those of you at home. Thoughtful.
Thinking ahead of what someone might need.
Yes. thinking ahead about what they might need, anticipating. Is that fair? Right. Anticipating what someone might need. That makes you thoughtful. How does it feel to say that about yourself? It feels good. Right. There's this expression of like, wait a minute, what if I am a good person? Who knew? Plot twist. But it feels good to look at your list and go, wait a minute, I actually already am this. And sometimes what happens is we forget, right? Can we hear from one more? Would you be willing to share a quality and an expression? Yeah, determined. You do what needs to be done, right? You figure it out. The figure out ability, is that a word? But yes. And what was the second one? Wise. I've come through a lot. You're batting 1,000 for getting through tough days, right? Yes. And sometimes we forget to give ourselves credit for what we're actually doing. And so we're trying to be better. We're trying to become something else. We're trying all of these things to prove that we are things when you already have a list in your hand right now of who you actually are. Do you believe me? It's interesting when you start to identify with your standards of integrity, this banner of wholeness. Imagine now you're on the mountaintop and you've got this flag, you have this banner with all of these words on it. That's how you stay more connected to yourself. And when you're stressed out, oftentimes what's happening is you're trying to do too much of your standards of integrity. Does that make sense? If you're looking at the list and you like all of the things on it, you might be trying to express too much of yourself. When you're burned out, sometimes what's happened is you've gone away from your standards of integrity for too long. Does that land? You might be engaged in things that are not lighting you up, that are not firing you up, and they're snuffing out that flame. That can be your beacon home. If you are hanging out with people who are not on your list, that's information for you. If you are having to work really hard to be in relationship with people who did not make your qualities list, or they don't have the qualities that you admire, you need to know that. It's important for you to have these touchstones when you feel stressed out or burned out. Does that land? So my intention with this going forward now is that you have this on a note card. And if you're having a tough day, and I think we can all agree that there's some tough days that we're having, right? It can be really helpful to look at your note card and go, I actually still know who I am. I'm connected to who I am. And how can I communicate from this place of wholeness? And it can be very difficult to communicate from a place of wholeness. Hold yourself in integrity, friends. We got to ride ahead, right? It's okay for us to communicate from our values, from our standards of integrity, and to collaborate with other people who we admire. Wouldn't that be a cool existence? This is my dream. It'd be so wonderful. So we're just about at time. Do you have any questions? Do you have any clarifications? Anything where you're like, I just have to speak one more time at the library function? What are the ahas that you're going to take with you? What's one aha that you're going to take with you? Like, wow, I hadn't thought about it like that. And yes, that's a shout out to you, Mike. Mike, my husband, and I have that as a saying. Hadn't thought about it like that before. What's something you haven't thought about like this before? Let's hear from 3 of you. We have time. What's something, an aha? Yeah. No? Yes. Yes. So she was talking about how burnout can be you're away from your standards of integrity, or you have to hang out with people who do not have those qualities. You've been way too long away from your qualities. That's true. You never know what you're going to say off the cuff. So thanks for capturing that. Other ahas that you're going to take with you. One more light bulb. Come on. We got one more light bulb in ya. Middle row. I'm coming to you next. Molly, go ahead. Yes. I know these are mine because I see them in others. Isn't that like great news? And kind of also like, please don't look at me. I didn't know we were going to get vulnerable in the library. But it matters for you to know that you actually can see in other people who you are. That's why we like each other. It feels good. And it's okay to feel good. Who knew? One more light bulb. Oh, good. Thanks. Thanks for watching. Hey, Alice. Trusting your instincts and feeling okay to go back to your core. Wow, did you see what I just did? This was like late at night and I did that verbatim. I feel really good about that. Thank you, Alice. Yes, this is that core. This is, and trusting your instincts. That's another way of saying this. Like your standards of integrity, this is who you are. It's your instinct. It's how you want to show up in the world. How lovely. And being able to trust that. And you don't all have to have the same. You shouldn't, in fact. You get to be very uniquely yourself. Connect to yourself, communicate from your standards of integrity, and then collaborate with other people because we've got complex problems we get to solve together. And that's not Pollyanna. That, for those of you that don't know that, does everybody know Pollyanna, please? Okay, thank you. You never know what room you're in anymore. But that's true. Having a sense of self, being able to talk from that place and being able to work together. Sounds like a pretty good recipe for success, yeah? Great. Thanks for watching, Alice. I really appreciate your time. I know you could be 700 other places, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come here and speaking. I know it gets kind of weird, but you did so well. Can you give yourselves a round of applause, please? Way to go. Thank you so much for being here. You have final thoughts, Tanya?
Thank you, Heidi. I enjoy getting to know you more and more all the time. It's a pleasure. Thank you to the audience for being here tonight to participate in our winter wellness program. All of you are eligible for 2 tickets if you're participating in the game that we're playing this winter. So the tickets are upstairs. The same for anybody online who's watching live or who watches the recording. I'm actually kind of surprised that we're starting to head into March, which means we only have 4 programs left in the winter wellness program, which is somewhat astonishing to me. There's one next Thursday called The Lost Spot, and that is about neurofibromatosis. And then Alan Burgo, the Forager Chef, is March 6th. Then that I'm encouraging all of you to attend or watch, and I will myself, is called Sleep Well by Dr. Corey Halibrandt. And then we also have Unstrumental, which is the high school, they call themselves not a cappella, but Capella choir. I don't really know. Capella, shouldn't it be a cappella? If there's no, okay, maybe it's misspelled here. Live at the library. So, and that is March 29th. So, and then I guess 2 other things here. We also have live harp music on March 8th. That's a Saturday from 11 to 12. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much. We're heading into spring. Pretty close. Have you seen the Easter stuff out already? All right. Have a good night. Bye.